anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction. Now, what is true?
I don't know about you guys, but around here, we call that pure nonsense. Unbelievable nonsense. Just reading the economiccollapseblog.com. Again, I mentioned this guy's articles and stuff by Michael Snyder. Mr. Obama, you want to listen to this video blog? Because there's some numbers here I want to discuss with you that are making me raise the BS flag on your peddling fiction statement. According to Michael Snyder at the Economic Collapse blog, corporate debt defaults explode to catastrophic levels not seen since the last financial crisis. If a new financial crisis had already begun, we would expect to see corporate debt defaults skyrocket. And that is precisely what's happening. As you will see, corporate defaults are currently at the highest level that we have seen since 2009. A wave of bankruptcies is sweeping the energy industry, but it isn't just the energy industry that is in trouble. In fact, the average credit rating for U.S. corporations is now lower than it was at any point during the last recession. This is yet another sign that we are in the early chapters of a major league economic crisis. Yesterday, I talked about how 23.2% of all Americans in their prime working years do not have a job right now. But today, I am going to focus on the employers. Big corporate giants all over America are in deep, deep financial trouble, and this is going to result in a tremendous wave of layoffs in the coming months. We should rejoice that U.S. stocks have rebounded a bit in the short term, but the euphoria in the markets is not doing anything to stop the wave of corporate defaults that is starting to hit Wall Street like a freight train. Zero Hedge is reporting that we have not seen this many corporate defaults since the extremely painful year of 2009. While many were looking forward to the weekend and last week's holiday shortened week for some overdue downtime, the CEOs of 5 mostly energy companies had nothing but bad news for their employees and shareholders. They had no choice but to throw in the towel and file for bankruptcy. And as Bloomberg reports, with last week's 5 defaults, the 2016 to date total is now 31, the highest since 2009 when there were 42 company defaults, according to Standard & Poor's. 4 of the defaults in the week ended March 23rd were by U.S. issuers, including UCI Holdings Ltd. and Peabody Energy Corp., the credit rating agency said. And by all indications, what we have seen so far is just the beginning. According to Wolf Richter, the average rating on U.S. corporate bond or corporate debt is already lower than it was at any point during the last financial crisis. What all this tells us is that we are in the early stages of an absolutely epic financial meltdown. Meanwhile, we continue to get more indications that the real economy is slowing down significantly. According to the Atlanta Fed, U.S. GDP growth for the first quarter is now expected to come in at just 0.6%, and Moody's Analytics is projecting a similar number. Of course, if the government was actually using honest numbers, people wouldn't be talking about the potential start of a new recession. Instead, they would be talking about the deepening of a recession that never actually ended. We are in the terminal phase of the greatest debt bubble the world has ever experienced. For decades, the United States has been running up government debt, corporate debt, and consumer debt. Our trade deficits have been bigger than anything the world has ever seen before, and our massively inflated standard of living was funded by an ever-increasing pile of IOUs. I love how Doug Nolan describes this in his recent piece, which goes on to say, with U.S. officials turning their backs on financial excesses, bubble dynamics, and unrelenting current account deficits, I expected the world to lose its appetite for U.S. financial claims. After all, how long should the world be expected to trade real goods and services for endless U.S. IOUs? As it turned out, rather than acting to discipline the profligate U.S. credit system, the world acquiesced. What is it? Acquiescent? Hang on. Hold on a second. Acquiesced to bubble dynamics. No one was willing to be left behind. Along the way, it was learned that large reserves of U.S. financial assets were integral to booming financial inflows and attendant domestic investment and growth. The U.S. has now run persistently large current account deficits for going on 25 years. Seemingly, the entire globe is now trapped in a regime of unprecedented monetary and fiscal stimulus required to levitate a world with unmatched debt and economic imbalances. History has seen nothing comparable, and I would strongly argue that the consequences of bubbles become much more problematic over time. The longer excesses persist, the deeper the structural impairment. As this bubble bursts, we are going to endure a period of adjustment unlike anything America has ever known before. I talk about the pain coming to America in my new book entitled The Rapture Verdict, which is currently the #1 new release in Christian eschatology on Amazon. To be honest, I don't know if any of us really understands the horror that is coming to this nation in the years ahead. None of us have ever experienced anything similar to it, so we don't really have a frame of reference to imagine what it will be like. This spike in corporate debt defaults is a major league red flag. Since the last financial crisis, our big corporations went on a massive debt binge, and now they are starting to pay the price. We never seem to learn from the errors of the past. Instead of learning our lessons the last time around, we just went out and made even bigger mistakes. I am afraid that history is going to judge us rather harshly. Those that are waiting for the next great financial crisis to begin can quit waiting, because it is already happening right in front of our eyes. As I said at the end of last year, I said it's go time. That September-October time frame, all the Shemitah, it is go time. And ever since then, things have been rapidly unfolding. Once again, the worst is absolutely yet to come. This is nothing. Filing bankruptcy and these numbers, revisions. Baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet. If you believe that the temporary rebound of U.S. stocks is somehow going to change the trajectory of where things are heading, you are going to end up deeply, deeply disappointed. This whole thing actually reminds me of something Lindsey Williams was told by the elite friend before he died, that one, Ken Fromm. And he said, when this all goes down, when it goes down, the economic crisis of our lifetimes, he said, you will be going down. Your lifestyles will be changing, not because you want them to, but by force. You're not going to be able to live that lifestyle you once knew. And he says, all of these little gadgets and all these things you so freely go out and get and can have with ease today, you won't be able to do that when this happens. And he says, once America starts to turn around, and it's going to be a while, he said, once we get through this and it starts to turn around for America, he said, even when it turns around, you will never have it the way you had it now. And I just want to say, I'll do the Google search for you right now. How much of the world's resources... Oh, I didn't even get that far. Google already knew what I wanted to ask. I guess there's a lot of people searching for that. The U.S. consumer, the United States, with less than 5% of the global population, uses about a quarter of the world's fossil fuel resources, burning up nearly 25% of the coal, 26% of the oil, and 27% of the world's natural gas. We have 5% of the global population. That means there's 95% left. And we're using 25, 26, 27% of the world's of the world's resources, energy resources. Tell me again, how we're not going to be affected. The United States will just continue trucking on the way we've been trucking on. I am all in on silver. I've mentioned this numerous times. I am banking everything that precious metals will be rising in a future world near you. Probably in the near future, but I'm not sure. This debt bubble, housing bubbles, student loan debt bubbles, everything bubble has to burst. As he said, but the markets they've rebounded again. That should be fine. I said this before. I'll remind people just so I can say that I said it again. I referred to when Barack Obama first walked into office, got elected, and it was the interim. He's not quite in the office yet, the White House. Bush is leaving, and they jacked up the debt ceiling, like a couple $1 trillion or whatever it was, 2 trillion, 1.5 something trillion. A month later, something like that, after he gets in office, well, we need to raise it again, another trillion or so. Okay. Year later, raise it again, right? But the point was that we had the economic crisis of 2008, 2009 taking place right as he was about to step into the office, and he takes it, and I'm taking the reins now, and we got this problem. So you can't blame him. He just opened the door. He just stepped into his house, his new house. And the old guy, well, it didn't actually, I guess it kind of happened when he was in power, but he was in power for 8 years. And he was walking out the door when this happened, so can I really blame him? Right, yeah, can't really blame anybody. So if the next president is about to be chosen or already selected, and we're going to have our rotten elections in November, you don't suppose the club will wait till that time to unleash hell on the financial markets? Maybe. Because then you can't blame Barack. He's on his way out, just like George Bush was on his way out. Now Barack gets to do the same thing. He gets to step out. And Hillary, which again, she's been selected by the Economist magazine cover. She's the club member. So assuming Hillary steps in, she can't say, well, I wasn't even in the, you can't say I had anything to do with this. I'm just coming in. I'm going to try to fix it, though. Just like Barack, I'll try to fix it, too. We're going to change things and change we can believe in. And what change came? We had a $9 trillion debt. It's now 19. 9 plus 9 is 18. That's doubling the debt in one president's, 2 terms, but one president's running of the White House. So but Congress and all of them, upped the debt, the exact amount that it took the country's 230-something years to accumulate in the first place. And in the span of 8 years, we've doubled that amount that took us 200-something years. Keeping in mind, it was around 1980 when we accumulated our first $1 trillion. How the hell did we, there's 200 years right there. Like, what happened there? And look how quickly and rapidly the debt grew from there. But even then, Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr., not right, 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 5 trillion. By the time old Dodo Bird Bush came into office, it was 6 trillion or so. By the time he left office, it was 9. And now it's doubled, $9 trillion. So 18 trillion total. Again, tell me again why you think, and I know most of you probably don't think this, but for the average sheep out there, why do you think we're going to get through this? We'll be okay and everything's fine and no bubbles to worry about and all that. I'm just reading about March. Is it March 1st or April 1st or something? Was it 500,000 people who are on food stamps get cut off? Boop. See ya. Well, as long as it's not me, right? Everything's fine. I don't care. It's not me. And then that turns to 1 million and 2 million. Well, as long as it's not me, I'm fine. Oh, then it's me. Now do you care? Well, yeah, I care. I took my benefits away, damn it. But you didn't care when it was getting taken away from everybody else. Oh, okay. Oh, then I guess I won't care when everybody's suffering and precious metals are going through the roof. But it's in my body, my being, to care, and I won't be able to fake that. So I'll just do what I always do and do videos saying I shoulda, coulda, woulda, wished more people watched my videos, or people like me, other people like me watch their videos that talk about these things: precious metals, history, finance, bubbles bursting, stock markets, rigged markets. So people have some kind of understanding as to what the hell happened to them when it goes on, when it happens, and what they should have been doing in preparation for it. Because like I said, you will not, under any circumstances, get a second shot at this. You will not be getting, let me go try to get some silver now after the collapse happened. Oh, no. You're not going to want to get it after that. Price is going to be outrageous. Well, maybe my kids will be able to, maybe they'll do this. No, again, our country, roughly 200 years it took to get $1 trillion in debt. Trillion, 2 trillion, 5 trillion, right? 30 years later, 9 trillion. 8 years later, 19 trillion. Can you see this little compounding, like compounding interest? It's not the kind of interest you want. So in the next 8 years, what do you suppose $19 trillion would turn into? If it took 30 years to go from 1 trillion to 9, I mean, you could look at it the other way. It took 20 years to go from 1 trillion to 6 trillion. So if we're already at 19, and let's just say, because you can see it compounding massively, it's looking terrible. So let's just say we got our crap together somehow in this country, our supposed leaders, and they cut and budget and this and that, and they came to something somewhat reasonable, which is absurd and it won't happen, but pretend it does. And we only match what happened over the last 8 years. In other words, we're not getting worse, like the chart shows us getting off the cliff. We're worse. Let's just stay flat. So, in other words, $19 trillion in debt has to double in 8 years. $38 trillion. Can you imagine that number? $38 trillion in 8 years from now. That sounds absolutely insane, doesn't it? But that is precisely what just happened over the previous 8 years. We had a $9 trillion deficit that turned to 18 and now 19. So 18 is technically doubling. Now we're past that. We're at 19. So 19 doubling, again, $38 trillion. This cannot end well. Now you understand why history is history and it's cyclical. And as part of this history, those who don't learn from it are doomed to repeat it. And I've got thousands of years of history that says precious metals will be significantly higher when all this crap goes down and gets worse. I just hope most of you, as long as I've been screaming this, have actually gone out and bought some. I know a lot of you have. Take care.